Discover a trail for every taste throughout the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina and Virginia. We call it the Cascade Highlands, a 9-county area including in Virginia, Smith, Grayson, Carroll, and Patrick counties, and in North Carolina, Allegheny, Wilkes, Stokes, Surry, and Yadkin counties. All rich in history, culture, recreation, viticulture, festivals, and events. You'll call it a great time. And now discover the historic Parkway that meanders from Virginia to North Carolina, showcasing the views, vistas, and venues where these two great states meet, along the Blue Ridge Parkway.
One of the primary purposes of a parkway is to provide a driving experience to the travelers. And it was designed for that. It was designed for a leisurely drive through the mountains.
Everybody loves the Parkway. They call it their road. Once they find it, they want to come here again.
Yeah, just it's a great drive. You know, there's lots to see and do.
It's 469 miles long, and there's a little bit of something for everybody up here.
Well, it's a varied landscape of the introduction to the whole Southern Highlands. You get agricultural landscapes, pastoral, peaceful, farmlands, and dramatic, breathtaking, distant mountain views.
The Parkway had its beginnings in one of our country's darkest economic hours.
The Blue Ridge Parkway was initially a project of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal. The set of programs that were designed to help put the country back to work and revive the economy during the Great Depression in the 1930s. But that doesn't really adequately answer how the Parkway started, because its roots went back much further than that, way back into the 20s even, when there were the first efforts to bring national parks into the eastern United States. Prior to the 20s, there weren't really any national parks east of the Mississippi River except for Acadia in Maine. And in the 20s, there got to be people who were interested in having national parks near the population in the east. So Shenandoah National Park was authorized in the 20s. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park was authorized in the 20s. And as the 30s came on and the Depression descended, those two parks, land was being bought to establish those two parks. And people got the idea, wouldn't it be great if there were a scenic highway to connect those two national parks?
And so the Blue Ridge Parkway was born.
Well, officially we could say that the start of the Blue Ridge Parkway began in 1933 when Congress appropriated funding for the start of a scenic highway through the Blue Ridge Mountains.
The mileage is almost equally split between Virginia and North Carolina, about 252 miles in North Carolina, about 217 in Virginia.
First, massive crews were hired and construction began in 1935.
The federal government hired surveyors, engineers, landscape architects to design the road. The construction of the road was divided into 45 different projects, and those projects were awarded to private contractors who hired local folks from the unemployment rolls to do the manual labor. And finally, the Civilian Conservation Corps and the Emergency Relief Administration brought in workers. There were 4 CCC camps along the Parkway, and these young men were the ones that did built the recreation areas, that planted trees, did erosion control along the Parkway. Well, it was definitely a challenge to build a road through the Blue Ridge Mountains. There were very few paved roads in these mountains in the 1930s. This was the first paved road in many counties. So they were first having to find a route to follow and then blasting through rocks. There were 26 tunnels on the Blue Ridge Parkway. Most of them are in North Carolina. Those were blasted with dynamite, and then they used large trucks with water-powered drills to drill out the rocks in the tunnels. So always very challenging. A lot of the work was done by hand. Mainly, a lot of that was to provide additional labor for more people.
By 1987, after a world war and land disputes, the Blue Ridge Parkway was finished, complete with several venues along the way, the first of which was near the location where the Parkway had started, Cumberland Knob.
Cumberland Knob was the first recreation area on the Parkway. It includes a picnic area and hiking trails, a very popular place with local visitors and churches to come and have their family reunions and church dinners.
Next is Doughton Park.
Doughton Park is the largest recreation area on the Blue Ridge Parkway. It has about 5,000 acres of high rolling meadows, about 30 miles of trails.
Originally called the Bluffs, was one of the original recreation areas on the Parkway. There was a CCC camp there, renamed in the 50s for Congressman Robert Doughton from that area of North Carolina, big Parkway supporter.
Well, this is milepost 241. Bluffs Coffee Shop Restaurant, the gift shops, and Bluffs Lodge just over the little hill right there.
We have good food, and everybody seems to, our ham and biscuits are delicious, fried chicken, blackberry cobbler. It's all good. It's all good.
And as you come into the restaurant, you'll see the old floor, the old table, the old chairs, the old back bar counter. That is all original from 1949, and we even have one of the original waitresses from 1949.
Nothing much has changed. The same furniture, floor. Only things change is menu prices.
The lodge is kind of an old country kind of a setting. No telephones, no air conditioners, no TVs, but lots and lots of peace and quiet and beautiful views and scenery out the windows.
Well, I tell them they couldn't find a better place to stay.
A destination that dates back even farther is Brinegar Cabin.
Hi, you've just wandered into a sweet little subsistence farm here on the mountain.
Brinegar Cabin is a historic site on the Blue Ridge Parkway. It was the home of Martin and Caroline Brinegar from the late 1800s to around 1935.
It was one of the sites selected to illustrate what Parkway designer Stanley Abbott called a managed museum of the American countryside.
You'll see a demonstration garden where we grow the traditional crops that the Brinegars would have grown on their farms, as well as demonstrating weaving and spinning and other traditional crafts of the mountain homestead.
Another popular stop is the Blue Ridge Music Center.
Well, you can hear mountain music at many different places all up and down the Blue Ridge Parkway, but we have one place that is totally devoted to mountain music, and that is the Blue Ridge Music Center. At the Blue Ridge Music Center, you can hear traditional music any day of the week being played outside. You can hear concerts on Saturday night. Come and see exhibits that explain the history and connections of mountain music to the people that lived here.
Finally, a scenic mill surrounded by history and beauty.
At Mabry Mill, you'll see a collection of buildings that represent mountain industry. There's the original mill that Ed and Lizzie Mabry built in the early 1900s, as well as their blacksmith shop. There's also a log cabin that represents the traditional style of building here in the mountains, and other examples of mountain industry. At Mabry Mill, we tell the story of people's roles in their community, the different jobs that they had, and how they worked together.
Together, the views, vistas, and venues make the 469 miles of the Blue Ridge Parkway an important part of our country's heritage, to be enjoyed today and preserved for all the tomorrows to come.
Parkway to me is part of a time when people believed that the government could do these things to serve us all, that there was a belief in the government that there were things it could do to serve people's souls and their physical needs and their psychological needs. And they created things of great beauty that have lasted till today. And I just think it's, it is a treasure for that reason. And I hope that we as a society will decide to preserve it, thinking forward to our children and grandchildren.